So in education, I mean, like E.D. Hirsch was a sort of management and education guru from the United States. I mean,
the word guru always terrifies me.
Of course, and of course, he follows in a long tradition of other gurus, such as Frederick Taylor, the manufacturing guru, and Duran and Deming, the total quality manufacturer.
Now I am.
That's
terrifying.
And you should be terrified because this is what's happening with global education now, as public and state education globally is the power and control of that is being transferred to large multinational corporations. Now, the problem with that is that, going back to E.D. Hirsch, E.D. Hirsch has this idea of foundational knowledge, which sounds like a great idea.
Love it. Love it so far.
But it's core knowledge. It's a sort of cultural transmission.
What does that mean?
It's the sort of foundation. The idea is that in order to progress through the education system, you have to have a core level of knowledge. So sort of foundational knowledge from which you then gain more knowledge. Which in principle sounds like a good idea, of course. So you learn to read and write, learning number, frameworks, concepts, and so forth. But even then you run up against immediate problems, because in its rush to standardize education, quite often the language of use for that will be English. So when we say literacy, for example, in developing countries, we mean English. It's a sort of neo-colonialism. Now, why is that a problem? It's a problem in lots of ways, of course, and linguists will tell you much more about that, and language experts will have much more knowledge. But at a simple level, it means that the language, the mother tongue of entire communities, becomes frozen in time, because the language of science and mathematics and engineering and art and so forth is constantly, language is organic, and so that grows in English and not in the mother tongue, which means that the mother tongue isn't used as frequently. And the problem with that is that there are whole concepts and views and thoughts. I think I'm right in saying that Danish, has something like 30 different names for the word friend. And they're all different kinds of friend. But we don't in English. It's quite a reductive language in that respect. I'm not a self-hating Brit, I just having observed some of these languages. And so we see a sort of reductionism. And that reductionism, so we have this cultural transmission, and in that cultural transmission, we're also providing a number of structural reinforcements in terms of how society operates. So the sort of structures that we know that exist in society today. Structural oppression, structural racism, and so forth, these become embedded in some of that. So really at a young age. The issue then is that education, as a globalized commodity, operates on the basis of standardization. And so again, sort of Frederick Taylor, I mentioned him earlier, who was a manufacturing guru. He's
arguably the world's first management consultant.
Well, he was arguably the world's first management consultant, but also the first user of big data, in the sense that what he was trying to do, and with good reason, was to transform craft production into mass production. So where you had craft on a manufacturing line, if we could simply measure what people were doing in to create that car or to create that spoon or cup or what have you, if we could just measure the processes and get them absolutely right, we could get to a point where we didn't have to have craftspeople on the production line.
You could actually just get a utilitarian worker.
You could get a utilitarian worker, give them a limited amount of training, and put them to work. Now, in education, we're seeing that happening, in fact.
The Taylor approach.
The sort of Taylorism. It's also a neo-Taylorism.